The morning sun beat down on Elm Street, casting long, playful shadows as 10-year-old Chloe, her face smudged with brilliant blues and greens, meticulously outlined the scales of a shimmering dragon. Beside her, 11-year-old Ethan, his brow, furrowed in concentration, rendered a colossal, multi-tiered castle that seemed to touch the sky, its turret spiraling into impossible architectural dreams. And a little further along the sidewalk, 9-year-old Maya, the master of vibrant hues, filled in a whispering forest of luminescent flora, her chalk strokes a dance of fuchsias, oranges, and purples that seemed to vibrate with life. Together, they were transforming block after block of dull gray concrete into an epic, sprawling fantasy world, a place where mythical beasts soared above floating islands, where enchanted rivers flowed with liquid starlight, and where ancient, benevolent trees watched over secret, sparkling glades. Their tools were simple, buckets brimming with professional grade, richly pigmented chalk, each stick a vibrant promise. They hummed with a quiet, artistic energy, completely lost in their creation, their award-winning talent evident in every meticulous detail, every gradient, every perspective that defied their young age. Their parents, knowing the quality of their children's work and the temporary nature of chalk, encouraged this outdoor studio, proud of their budding prodigies. The air was filled with the gentle scrape of chalk, the distant chirping of birds, and the occasional laughter from the kids as a particularly tricky detail came to life under their practiced hands. It was a scene of pure, innocent creativity, a vibrant splash against the meticulously manicured lawns of the suburban neighborhood, a place that usually prided itself on its pristine, uniform appearance. Suddenly, a sharp, piercing shriek cut through the peaceful morning, slicing through the air like a razor blade. "What in the blazes do you think you're doing?" The voice, shrill and laced with indignant fury, belonged to Barbara, a woman whose entire existence seemed governed by an invisible rule-book, a self-appointed guardian of neighborhood conformity. She stood on her perfectly manicured lawn, hands planted firmly on her hips, her perfectly coiffed blonde hair seemingly vibrating with outrage. Her eyes, usually narrowed in suspicion, were now wide with what she clearly perceived as an unforgivable offense. Barbara was the kind of person who saw a misplaced garden gnome as a civic crisis and an unraked leaf as a personal affront. Her own home was a testament to rigid order, every shrub trimmed to mathematical precision, every window gleaming, every sidewalk slab devoid of so much as a speck of dust. The vibrant, fantastical mural sprawling across the community sidewalk in front of her house was, to her, nothing short of an act of pure, unadulterated vandalism. Her face, usually a mask of polite disdain, was now contorted in a sneer, a vein throbbing visibly in her temple. She wore a crisp linen pantsuit, as if prepared for a board meeting, not a confrontation with children, and clutched her designer handbag as if it were a shield against the perceived chaos. The children froze, chalk sticks hovering midair, their joyful expressions replaced by confusion and a nascent dread. Maya, startled, nearly dropped her iridescent purple chalk. Ethan slowly straightened up, his eyes wide, while Chloe, always the most composed, carefully placed her chalk down before turning to face the approaching storm. Barbara stomped across her lawn, each step echoing the righteous indignation that consumed her. "This is an absolute disgrace," she spat, pointing a trembling, perfectly manicured finger at the shimmering scales of Chloe's dragon. "Look at this mess. You are defacing public property. Do your parents know you're out here ruining our sidewalks? This is completely unacceptable. This is a residential area, not some sort of street fair for your ... your childish scrawlings." Her voice rose with each accusation, growing louder, more piercing, attracting the attention of a dog walker down the street. Chloe, though intimidated, found her voice. "It's just chalk, ma'am. It washes away. We're making art." Ethan, ever the enthusiastic explainer, added, "It's a fantasy world. See, this is the Whisper Wind Dragon, and that's the Cloud Song Castle." He gestured proudly at his intricate towers, chalk dust flaking from his fingertips. Maya, timidly, held up a piece of chalk. "We use special art chalk," she whispered, her voice barely audible. But Barbara wasn't listening. Her eyes swept over the magnificent mural, seeing only dirt, disorder, and defiance. "Art," she scoffed, a dismissive wave of her hand indicating her profound lack of appreciation. "This is vandalism. It's an eyesore. My property value is going to plummet because of your little gang activity on the pavement. I pay my HOA fees for a clean, orderly neighborhood, not for this kindergarten mess." She took a step closer, towering over the children, her shadow falling menacingly over Chloe's unfinished dragon. "I am calling the Homeowners Association about this. This is a clear violation of aesthetic guidelines. You hear me? A violation. I expect this completely removed by sundown, or there will be consequences." She puffed out her chest, convinced. She was the pinnacle of civic responsibility, a defender of neighborhood decorum. Without another word, or waiting for any further explanation from the bewildered children, Barbara pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the keypad with furious speed. "Linda," she barked into the receiver, her voice still resonating with outrage. "It's Barbara from Elm Street. You are not going to believe what these children are doing to our sidewalks. It's an absolute disgrace. Vandalism in broad daylight. They're using chalk?" "Yes, chalk. But it's everywhere. It's massive. They've covered 3 full blocks. It's utterly irresponsible. My neighbors will be appalled. You need to send someone out here immediately, or better yet, come yourself. This is a clear violation of aesthetic guidelines, a blight on our community. It's ruining the pristine look of our homes." Her tone was demanding, self-righteous, dripping with a sense of entitlement, as if the children's joy in creating art was a personal attack on her very being. She was convinced she was entirely in the right, a crusader against chaos. The children watched, horrified, as Barbara continued her one-sided conversation, painting a picture of deliberate destruction. Chloe's jaw tightened, a mix of anger and hurt burning in her eyes. Ethan's shoulders slumped, his artistic pride deeply wounded by Barbara's harsh words. Maya looked on the verge of tears, clutching her small piece of chalk like a lifeline, the vibrant colors of her forest now seeming dull under the shadow of Barbara's wrath. Barbara finally lowered her phone, a triumphant, superior smirk playing on her lips, believing she had effectively put these unruly children in their place. The tension hung heavy in the warm morning air, the brilliant, fantastical chalk art, a stark, silent testament to boundless creativity pitted against rigid, unyielding conformity, a beauty now threatened by a storm of unwarranted anger. The children were left with a profound sense of injustice and fear of what punitive measure might come next, while Barbara, oblivious to the emotional damage she had inflicted, walked back to her immaculate home, feeling utterly victorious in her perceived triumph over vandalism. Despite Barbara's venomous threats and the sting of her accusations, Chloe, Ethan, and Maya initially stood frozen, a collective sense of injustice washing over them. Maya, her lower lip trembling, looked up at Chloe, tears welling in her eyes, while Ethan kicked lightly at a stray piece of chalk, a scowl on his face. But Chloe, resilient and focused, took a deep breath. "She doesn't understand art," she stated, her voice small but firm. "We shouldn't let her stop us." With newfound determination, they returned to their fantastical mural, their movements now infused with a quiet defiance. The whisper wind dragon scales began to gleam with even more intricate patterns. The cloud song castle's turrets gained additional impossible details, and Maya's luminescent forest deepened in its magical glow. They worked with renewed passion, their chalk strokes more deliberate, each line a silent rebuttal to Barbara's accusations. They added tiny, hidden fairies in the foliage, miniature, sparkling waterfalls cascading from the floating islands, and fantastical creatures peeking from behind rainbow-colored trees, ensuring every inch was a testament to their award-winning precision and boundless imagination. Their creations were not mere scribbles. They were masterpieces etched onto concrete, temporary wonders that brought vibrant life to the otherwise uniform street. The chalk they used was designed for outdoor murals, non-toxic and easily washed away by rain, leaving no permanent mark, a fact they knew well, even if Barbara chose to ignore it. As the day progressed and the sun climbed higher, casting dappled light through the mature oak trees, other residents of Elm Street began to emerge. Mrs. Henderson, a kind-faced elderly woman who lived 2 doors down, paused her morning walk, her eyes wide with delight. "Oh, my goodness," she exclaimed, her voice soft with admiration. "This is simply breathtaking. That dragon, Chloe, it looks like it could just fly off the sidewalk. And Ethan, that castle is magnificent, truly architectural. Maya, your forest is glowing." She knelt down, her face close to Maya's section, tracing an invisible finger over a particularly intricate flower. "This is absolutely beautiful. You children are so incredibly talented." She offered them a plate of freshly baked cookies, a small gesture of encouragement that warmed their spirits. Further along, Mr. Davis, a local art teacher, stopped his bicycle, his professional eye immediately recognizing the skill on display. "You three," he said, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "Your use of color and perspective is really quite advanced. The way you've created depth in this fantasy world, it's exceptional. Have you considered submitting your work to the annual City Art Fair? I think you'd do wonderfully," he lingered, offering advice on shading techniques, clearly impressed, unknowingly adding to the narrative that these were no ordinary children, but artists of significant caliber. Throughout the afternoon, more neighbors approached, not with complaints, but with words of praise, offering cold drinks, and marveling at the ever-expanding world unfolding on the pavement. Children from other blocks rode their scooters over, their eyes wide with wonder, some even asking if they could learn from the 3 young masters. The community's positive reaction was overwhelming, a stark contrast to Barbara's singular, angry voice. Meanwhile, Barbara, stewing in her perfectly ordered home, had indeed wasted no time. After her initial furious phone call to Linda, the HOA representative, she had composed an elaborate, multi-point email, complete with attached photos taken from unflattering angles, designed to exaggerate the perceived chaos. Her words were sharp, accusatory, demanding immediate action. "This is beyond a simple nuisance," she wrote, her fingers practically assaulting the keyboard. "This is a deliberate defacement of our community's aesthetic standards, a brazen act, a vandalism by unruly children whose parents clearly lack any sense of civic responsibility. I expect a formal warning issued to these families and a swift enforcement of our guidelines. This entire art display must be removed, and punitive measures taken to ensure such a travesty never occurs. Our property values, our very way of life, are at stake." She had then called Linda again, leaving a terse voicemail, reiterating her demands and implying that Linda's competence, and perhaps even her job, hinged on a swift and satisfactory resolution. Barbara truly believed she was a hero, protecting the sanctity of their suburban haven from the encroaching chaos of children's creativity. She viewed the sidewalk as her personal domain, an extension of her pristine property, and any deviation from its immaculate gray surface was an affront. Her motivations were rooted in a deep-seated need for control, a fear of anything that disrupted her carefully constructed world of order and predictability. The sight of the vibrant, free-form art was a direct challenge to her rigid worldview, a splash of untamed color in her monochromatic existence, and she intended to eradicate it with unwavering resolve, completely oblivious to the artistic merit, or the sheer joy it brought to the rest of the neighborhood. Barbara's furious calls and emails to the Homeowners Association bore swift, if misguided, fruit. Within 2 days, a formal, sternly worded letter arrived at the homes of Chloe, Ethan, and Maya's families. It was addressed from the HOA board, bearing the signature of Linda, the HOA representative Barbara had so vehemently lobbied. The letter, delivered with an air of official gravitas, meticulously outlined violations of Article 7, Section B, Aesthetic and Public Property Maintenance, citing the extensive and unauthorized defacement of common area sidewalks through non-approved artistic mediums. It demanded the immediate and complete removal of all chalk art within 24 hours and levied an initial fine of $250 per household, threatening escalating penalties, potential legal action, and even the suspension of community privileges if ignored. The parents, initially shocked by the formal tone and punitive measures, quickly moved from disbelief to a simmering anger. Chloe's mother, Sarah, a usually calm and composed architect, read the letter aloud, her voice trembling slightly with indignation. Unauthorized defacement. This is art, beautiful, temporary art that the entire neighborhood loves. Ethan's father, David, a genial engineer, balled his fists. And a fine, for chalk. This is ridiculous. Barbara has gone too far this time. Maya's parents, Emily and Tom, small business owners who cherish their daughter's artistic spirit, were equally incensed. We need to fight this, Emily declared, her usual gentle demeanor hardening with resolve. Our children are being targeted simply for expressing their creativity. The parents quickly converged, united in their determination to protect their children and their right to engage in harmless, beautiful art. They decided to collectively refuse the fine and prepared a counter-response, gathering photos of the chalk art, testimonies from appreciative neighbors, and research on local ordinances regarding temporary public art. The news of the HOA letter and the levied fines spread like wildfire through the neighborhood, quickly turning the tide of opinion even further against Barbara. The positive community response that had cheered the children earlier now solidified into open support and, in many cases, outright outrage directed at Barbara and the HOA's perceived overreach. Mrs. Henderson, cookies in hand, personally went door to door, rallying support and collecting signatures on a petition demanding the HOA rescind the fines and acknowledge the artistic value of the children's work. Mr. Davis, the art teacher, offered to write a formal letter of endorsement, highlighting the educational and cultural benefits of the children's public art. Other neighbors who had admired the vibrant mural openly confronted Barbara on her lawn, expressing their dismay and confusion at her extreme reaction. It's just chalk, Barbara, one exasperated neighbor shouted across the street during her morning walk. My kids love seeing it every day. What's your problem? Barbara, accustomed to her neighbor's quiet compliance, was taken aback by this sudden wave of public disapproval. She retreated into her home, peering through her blinds, convinced the entire neighborhood had suddenly gone mad, conspiring against her quest for order. Linda, the HOA representative, found herself caught in the crossfire. Her phone buzzed relentlessly with calls, not just from Barbara, but from a growing number of angry residents, expressing their displeasure with the HOA's heavy-handed approach and the unfair targeting of the talented children. She realized the situation was rapidly spiraling out of control, far beyond a simple chalk art dispute. It wasn't long before the burgeoning community dispute caught the attention of local media. Sarah, Chloe's mother, had a cousin, a junior reporter named Jessica Chen, who worked for the Maple Creek Chronicle, the town's small but feisty local newspaper. During a family call, Sarah recounted the absurd escalation, the HOA letter, and the unified community support. Jessica's ears perked up immediately. Hold on, Sarah, she interrupted. Kids doing chalk art, an AngryKaren, an HOA fining them, and the whole neighborhood rallying. This is gold. This is exactly the kind of human interest story our readers love. Local people standing up against bureaucratic nonsense, plus cute, talented kids. Jessica, a keen observer of local quirks and conflicts, saw the clear David versus Goliath dynamic at play, a perfect narrative for her next front-page article. She promised to look into it, and within hours, she was on Elm Street, notebook in hand, camera slung over her shoulder, She started by politely knocking on doors, interviewing neighbors who enthusiastically shared their admiration for Chloe, Ethan, and Maya's art. She took dozens of photos of the vibrant mural, capturing its intricate details and sprawling beauty. She then approached the children, who, initially shy, slowly opened up, eagerly explaining their fantasy world and their passion for art. Jessica's questions were kind, making them feel seen and valued, not chastised. The looming HOA deadline and the threat of escalating fines, coupled with the children's genuine innocence and artistic prowess, created a compelling narrative. The dispute was no longer confined to Elm Street. It was about to become public, turning a local squabble into a headline, raising the stakes considerably for everyone involved, especially for Barbara, who was still blissfully unaware of the media spotlight about to shine on her perceived victory. Jessica Chen, the intrepid reporter from the Maple Creek Chronicle, spent days meticulously digging into the chalk art controversy. She interviewed more neighbors, gathering overwhelming testimonies of the children's talent and the joy their art brought to the community. She spent hours photographing every intricate detail of the sprawling mural, determined to convey its artistic merit through her lens. During one interview with Mr. Davis, the local art teacher who had stopped by the children's sidewalk studio in Part 2, he casually mentioned, "You know, those kids, Chloe, Ethan, and Maya, they're not just doodling, they've won multiple accolades at the annual Maple Creek City Art Fair for the past 2 years. Chloe's digital landscapes are astounding. Ethan's sculptures from recycled materials have won Best in Show, and Maya's mixed media pieces are simply phenomenal for her age. They're prodigies, really." Jessica's ears perked up, her reporter's instinct tingling. Award-winning artists. This wasn't just a quaint neighborhood dispute. This was a story of artistic suppression, a clear example of ignorance battling genuine talent. She immediately pivoted her investigation, contacting the director of the city art fair, a renowned local artist and art advocate named Eleanor Vance. Eleanor, upon hearing the details of the HOA's accusations and Barbara's relentless complaints, was aghast. "This is preposterous," she declared over the phone. "Chloe, Ethan, and Maya are not vandals. They are exceptional young artists. Their work is recognized throughout the county. I still have their winning pieces on display in our online gallery archives. They are a credit to our community, not a detriment." Eleanor not only confirmed their numerous awards and accolades, but also possessed a treasure trove of documented proof, official certificates, high-resolution photographs of their winning pieces, and glowing reviews from art critics. She immediately offered to provide a statement and even appear at any necessary hearing to defend the children. This was the irrefutable evidence, the unexpected witness Jessica had been hoping for, turning the tide decisively in favor of the young artists. The HOA, under pressure from the growing public outcry and the media's attention, hastily scheduled an emergency meeting. Flyers were posted throughout the neighborhood, and residents were encouraged to attend to discuss the controversial art display and the unresolved fines. Barbara, still completely oblivious to Jessica's deeper investigation, saw this meeting as her moment of ultimate triumph, an opportunity to publicly shame the children and solidify her victory. She arrived at the community clubhouse dressed impeccably, her posture stiff with self-importance, a smug expression plastered across her face. Linda, the HOA representative, looked distinctly uncomfortable, sensing the shifting currents of opinion in the room. The children's parents were there, armed with their petition and neighbor testimonials, and then Jessica Chen entered, not just as an observer, but with Eleanor Vance by her side, carrying a portfolio of official documents. The room was packed, buzzing with anticipation. As the meeting commenced, Barbara launched into another tirade, reiterating her accusations of vandalism, property devaluation, and general disorder. She presented her own blurry photos of the chalk art, attempting to portray it as nothing more than unsightly graffiti. She even brought a small, laminated copy of the HOA's aesthetic guidelines, circling the relevant sections with a dramatic flourish. Then, Jessica Chen, politely raising her hand, requested to speak. Given the media interest, Linda reluctantly granted her the floor. Jessica, in a calm but firm voice, began by acknowledging the concerns raised about public property. However, she continued, "My investigation has unearthed some critical information that changes the entire context of this situation." She then introduced Eleanor Vance, who stepped forward, radiating an air of undeniable authority and professionalism. Eleanor, addressing the room, began to speak, her voice clear and resonant. "These children, Chloe, Ethan, and Maya, are not just neighborhood kids with some chalk. They are exceptional, award-winning artists, recognized provincially for their talent." She then produced the stack of certificates, showcasing photos of the children receiving their awards at prestigious art competitions, displaying their winning pieces on a large screen that had been set up for presentations. She read excerpts from glowing critiques by art judges, detailing the maturity of Chloe's lines, the structural genius of Ethan's compositions, and Maya's masterful use of color. The murmurs in the room turned into gasps of astonishment, then quiet applause. The revelation hit Barbara like a physical blow. Her smug expression vanished, replaced first by confusion, then outright disbelief. "What award-winning?" she stammered, her voice cracking. That's impossible. They're just drawing on the sidewalk." As Eleanor continued to present the irrefutable evidence of the children's artistic prowess, Barbara's face flushed crimson. Her meticulously constructed facade of righteous indignation crumbled. She stood there, exposed and humiliated, her previous accusations of vandalism now ringing hollow and utterly foolish in the face of such undeniable talent. The room watched, mesmerized by the unfolding truth, as Barbara's carefully cultivated image of authority completely shattered, leaving her sputtering, cornered, and utterly speechless. The revelation of Chloe, Ethan, and Maya's award-winning status sent shockwaves through the HOA meeting, leaving Barbara's furious accusations utterly decimated. The room, which moments before had been filled with simmering tension, erupted into a wave of applause for the children and their parents, punctuated by murmurs of "unbelievable" and "how could she?" Linda, the HOA representative, her face etched with a mix of embarrassment and realization, knew immediately that the game was up. The overwhelming evidence presented by Eleanor Vance, coupled with Jessica Chen's active reporting, her pen furiously scribbling notes, her camera subtly flashing, left no room for doubt or further dispute. Linda cleared her throat, her voice now much softer, more apologetic than authoritative. "Given this compelling new information," she began, glancing pointedly at Barbara, who was now huddled in her seat, red-faced and avoiding eye contact, "the HOA board will immediately reconvene to rescind the fines levied against the children's families. Furthermore, we acknowledge that the chalk art, far from being an act of vandalism, is indeed a beautiful, temporary addition to our community. We sincerely apologize for any distress and misunderstanding this situation has caused." A collective sigh of relief, followed by a louder cheer, swept through the room. The children's parents exchanged triumphant glances, their months of worrying and frustration finally melting away. Justice, in its own quiet way, had been served. Barbara, however, found herself not only defeated but publicly humiliated. The very neighbors she had sought to impress with her rigid adherence to rules now looked at her with a mixture of pity and disdain. Her reign as the neighborhood's self-appointed enforcer of aesthetic purity had come to an abrupt and spectacular end. In the days that followed, the Maple Creek Chronicle published Jessica Chen's front-page expose, complete with stunning photographs of the children's vibrant chalk mural alongside images of their past award-winning pieces. The headline screamed, "Chalk Art Controversy. Local Vandals Revealed as Award-Winning Artists." The story went viral, shared countless times on local social media groups, drawing comments that overwhelmingly praised the children and criticized Barbara's actions.